Hi, it's Dr. Denise O'Neill Green, and I'm here again to talk with you about another book that I had the chance to read this summer. And I just want to share a little bit about my thoughts regarding the book, The Dichotomy of Leadership. Next week, both the United States and Canada will be remembering its veterans. In the US, it's called Veterans Day. In Canada, it's called Remembrance Day. And in Canada, actually, many people wear, you may see here on my sweater, a poppy. Many people wear a poppy in recognition of veterans who have served the country. And poppies that are beaded have a special significance because it's recognition of Indigenous veterans. Um, so, in thinking about Veterans Day and Remembrance Day that's coming up, I wanted to share with you my thoughts about a particular book that was written by two Navy SEALs. And the name of the book is called The Dichotomy of Leadership. Now, when I shared with a few people that I had started reading this book, The Dichotomy of Leadership, and that it was written by two Navy SEALs, a couple of them thought, "What? You're reading a book by military men, by Navy SEALs?" In fact, but I actually thought, okay, let me take myself out of my own comfort zone in reading books that I've shared with you already about two Black women leaders, Kamala Harris and obviously Michelle Obama. And those were great reads for me. But I had another great read, and that's this book, The Dichotomy of Leadership. What I think is so fantastic about this book is that it brings forward through the voices of the two authors, and let me see if I can get their names correct here. Um, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. So from this point on, I'll just name them as Jocko and Leif. So Jocko and Leif wrote this book, and I read it through an Audible book. And the first thing that I liked about it was their storytelling and the way they went about sharing different experiences that they've had in the theater of war, and how they broke it down in a way that translated to aspects of leadership. Their philosophy is that everything goes back to leadership. Any kind of failure, any kind of success really leads back, all roads go back to the leader and leadership. So let me share with you just a really quick description from the, I guess for the lack of a better word, uh, from from the marketing company of the book. But I think this actually does capture my thoughts about the book. So this is what it says. Every leader must be ready and willing to take charge, to make hard, crucial calls for the good of the team and the mission. Something much more difficult to understand is that in order to be a good leader, one must also be a good follower. This is a dichotomy of leadership. And the authors, Jocko and Leif, throughout the book, The Dichotomy of Leadership, speaks to this balancing act that many leaders must take on, being a leader, but also a follower, being one who oversees the mission versus being more hands off. Someone who's very specific in prescribing every detail, but yet allowing your team to fill in the blanks and bring forward their own thoughts and ways of going about fulfilling and completing the mission. So, what I really appreciated about this book, I'm not going to be too long in my discussion about it, but essentially, I really loved how they organized the book. It was done in a way that they would start off with doing storytelling and talking about a particular situation that happened in the field, in Navy SEAL training, any kind of example they would bring forward. So they would share that, and then they would break it down and talk about the different aspects of what occurred from the particular narrative that they shared with the reader. And then after doing that, they pull out specific principles and then define them for the reader. Following that, they provide or a variety of different applications of those principles in the real world. So away from the theater of war, but focusing on what happens in corporations and organizations and companies, and showing how these various principles that they've spelled out actually apply in the role of leaders. So, one thing I want to really undergird, or let's say share with you, um, is that I never would have thought reading a book by Navy SEALs would apply to my work. But my work, just as work in any other kind of area, requires good leadership. And I think in reading the book, uh, for those of us who've been in positions of influence, of power, authority, leading a team, that naturally there are different aspects of leadership we're drawn to more so than others. But what this book, I think, does very well is lay out, it might be between 7 to 10 different dimensions of leadership and the balancing act that one has to play. As I said earlier, being a leader and a follower, being someone who's very prescriptive and direct versus not being as descriptive, being more generalist, and allowing your team to exercise their own thinking and determine steps forward. So they do that very well in the book. And for some of us, I guess, who are very entrenched in leadership theory and read a lot of leadership books, it may come across as, of course, that's what you do. But for myself, in reading the book, I found it quite refreshing, very useful, very helpful, especially how they gave very specific um, examples versus just being very theoretical. This is not a theoretical book. This book is extremely practical, and I like the way they outline the book. So I would be interested in hearing what you think if you actually have an opportunity to read the book. Again, the name of the book is The Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko and Leif, and the two of them really bring to the pages. For me, they brought to my listening ear different ways that as a leader, one is always responsible for the outcome of what your team does or does not do, especially the decisions to relieve somebody of their duties or have them move on to another opportunity versus staying within the team. They express those are very tough decisions to make. And then one thing that I didn't expect is when they talked about moving, I may not have this right, but the idea of moving things up the chain of command. So they were very clear that even though this is a military division, and you're expected to do what you're told or follow your orders, they actually bring up different occasions where following your orders is not the best way to go. And how do you go about moving that back up the chain of command, that information to signal to your superiors that this is probably not the best way to go. So this is uh, again, these are different things that I think all leaders can learn from. Um, and I think I'll leave it at that. So check out the book, The Dichotomy of Leadership. And I'd love to hear what you think. Overall, it's been given, I think, on Audible about a 5-star book by many people. Some people felt it was pretty common sense in terms of what they shared. But again, I really liked how they laid out the book in a practical way so that one could take any chapter and begin to apply it to your own leadership style. So take care and happy Veterans Day, uh, happy Remembrance Day, and do remember our veterans. Take care. Bye.